Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. I'm Kristin, and I'm joined by my ninja-esque co-host, Ron Ward. Wow, you're getting really creative with these intros, Ron.
You pronounced that really well.
Thank you. That was on the fly, too, ninja-esque. I've been spending a lot of time. I know you're a karate black belt, but I've been spending a lot of time in the dojan, the taekwondo. So
yeah, and you do know that the Korean style was the enemy of the Japanese style that I trained.
Yes,
but
I do.
That's another story.
I do. And the origin is pretty cool because Master Carlos just told me the Koreans were poor, unlike the Chinese and the Japanese, and they didn't have horses. So they had to learn to kick the riders off the horses. And that's why Taekwondo is very kick heavy.
Yeah, I did win the Taekwondo Grand Championship in Knoxville, Tennessee, but we won't talk about that.
With your karate training.
Yeah, and it was like me
I'm sure
against
they
the
loved
whole,
that.
It was like me against the whole auditorium.
Oh,
but
I can only imagine.
I loved it. Okay, so we have a wonderful conference coming up. It's the Forward Operations Leadership and Entrepreneur Conference. Kristin and I are both speakers. She's actually the MC as well, but guys, trust me, we have got some amazing guest speakers, and we would love to see you there. If you've been listening to the podcast, Kristin and I would love to meet you. We're going to try to do a podcast or two while Kristin is in South Carolina. So please go to forward with the number 4, WARD, operations.com, forwardoperations.com, and look at everything we have to offer. Get you a seat and come visit us in Summerville, South Carolina.
Yes, absolutely. I'm bringing 2 of my girlfriends from Oregon with me, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're excited to not only hear from all the speakers. I like that it's so versatile. I mentioned this, last week, but we have a speaker for everyone. So it's going to be a great time and a beautiful city.
Absolutely. It's going to be fun.
So, Ron, I know that we've talked about this a few times, and this has been ongoing for you since we first met 3 years ago, right? But
yes,
you have been through quite the ordeal that we've never been able to really talk about until now. And your court proceedings are complete, and I understand you can provide some level of detail on what happened. Lay a foundation for us.
Yeah, Kristin, and I didn't know if I would ever even discuss this, but I'm in a place now that I can provide some information. And I want to be very clear. I'm doing this for our listeners so they cannot step into some of the pitfalls that I did. So I want to take you back, and it does have something to do with our name. I decided to write a book called The Dirty Side of Leadership. And I was in the middle of retiring. And when you retire as an academy director, like my retirement was a full year plan. It's not like a 2-week notice kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm in this process. I'm extremely busy traveling and writing a book. So just as I finished my book, I hired a media director, a digital media director. A lot of things that we discussed about digital marketing and things like that, I didn't know much about.
Right.
So I agreed to hire this person.
Well, I can see how that happened, Ron, because you're coming from working for somebody for an entire career, and now you're doing your own thing, and you just don't know what you don't know. So naturally, you're in a vulnerable position, and you trusted this person, right? So let's dive a little deeper into what transpired.
Yeah, and in all honesty, this person was smart, but you can be gifted and be unethical or have other issues. So in this process, I did get a little excited with the flashing lights. She promised me the world. So I agreed to secure the services, and we started off pretty well. She built an email, website, things like that, the basic things that you would need to be successful. Now, the first thing I wanted her to do was launch my book, which I had already published the book, but I'm saying, there's a big difference in throwing a book out there than marketing a book. So that was kind of our first agreement, and that started off pretty well. But I have to be honest, Kristin, I don't think she had anything to do. I had some really good book sales the first week, but I had been pouring it on Facebook, Instagram, calling friends, family, anybody that I could.
Right.
And so I ended up selling a lot of books that first week. And but she kind of took credit for it, but I already knew I was going to sell those books. She had barely started working with me.
Right.
So anyway, I'm trying to think where to go to next.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot. So I'm curious, backing up a little bit, where did you find her when you were looking for this assistance?
Okay, this is someone that I knew collaterally. I knew
Like
someone
friend
in
of a
her
friend thing?
family. Yeah, friend of a friend kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the way this happened. And we began to talk. I just ran into her and we began to talk. What are you doing? And I explained what I was doing. She said, well, that's ironic. I'm a digital marketing director. And I said, explain that to me. And it all sounded great.
Right,
Kristin,
right.
it sounded so good.
Yeah, you're like, this is exactly what I need. And then
Yeah.
naturally, when someone feels like when it's a friend of a friend or even friend of family, you feel like they're not going to screw me over, right? Like
Exactly.
because they could lose this family relationship or this friendship, right? So there was that extra piece of what felt like security at the time.
It really did.
So I want to, fast forward a little bit to when things started falling apart. What was your first indication of, oh boy, this is not a good deal?
Yeah, and I was hoping you would ask that. The first red flag is there's a section in my book for anyone that has read it. I had a devastating tragedy in my family, and it was so difficult. I had buried that, Kristin. It was so difficult that I wrote that, and I got other people, like I proofread the whole book except that chapter. I wrote it and I walked away. I didn't want to see it, didn't want to hear about it. It was a really painful time in my life. So I had someone else, I had 2 or 3 other people edit it. And so anyway, the book goes to publish. We start this process, and I was on a phone call with her, and I basically made a comment about that section because the first thing I asked her to do was read the book. I said, I feel like you've got to read the book to know me. And I was paying a lot of money. I think it's only reasonable. So this person assured me they'd read the book. And then when I brought up that, they started laughing and said, yeah, that was hilarious.
Oh, wow.
And I knew that's when I thought, this person's a liar. And this person did not read the book.
Right. Oh yeah, that is a red flag. So, and naturally, because your book does have humor throughout, right? You're telling stories about your life that do have humor woven within, and clearly she just figured the odds were with her to say it was hilarious. So yeah, so that's very telling. And going from there, what other red flags started? I mean, naturally, your trust is now broken, right? Because
My
she
trust
didn't
is
read
already
it.
broken.
Yeah.
By the way, you were right, but I will tell you that someone in her family did read the book, was one of the biggest fans of the book, and wrote, talked to me, did an endorsement on Amazon, all of that stuff. So I do believe she talked to a family member that had read the book. So they probably talked a lot more about the humor in the book than tragedy. So then at some point, I received a message that she wanted to transfer the website. I was doing business under ronward.com at that time. She said that the domain would be better suited for a different registrar host. So I looked it up. It looked fine. And it still looks fine, by the way, the company. So I agreed to move the website hosting from one registrar to another. And when I agreed, she told me I'm going to get a code on my phone that she needed the code. This is a trusting relationship. I said, sure. And I sent the code. And after that, now keep in mind, there's all kinds of things that transpired. And I finally terminated her because of other conduct. Because at some point, someone started to hire me from the district court in Florida, and someone that happened to know me is the only reason I know this. They were in a group meeting to hire a speaker, and somebody said Ron Ward, and they said, let's look at his website. They pulled it up, and I had no website.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So that ronward.com that she had access to, she discontinued it, right? And you're under the impression she took ownership of it.
She took ownership of it, and then she started, I think, to do some work on the website, put it under construction, because I still would have had access to the website, even though she took ownership of the domain name and the registrar. So I find out, you can imagine, I'm in panic mode, and then could not reach her for days. So I ended up driving about an hour and a half away, worked from daylight to dark on a new website, just a makeshift website, because she was going to try to get them to circle back around and visit my website again. So I'm providing content and all this stuff. I got someone else to build a website. And I was exhausted. I came back, but I lost that speaking gig.
Oh, that is so frustrating.
It's very frustrating.
So you recently had a conclusion. This goes to court. You recently had a conclusion on your court case, and that's why you're able to talk about that today. That's why it's been how long was that? 2 years?
Yeah, it's over 2 years that this has been lingering. And keep in mind, Kristin, this was not just, I terminated our relationship, but this was a breach of personal trust, a trusting relationship, someone I thought I could trust. And then it went into fraud and theft and all of these other things. And so after my whole career, spending so much time in court, I ended up testifying in court again over this case. And Kristin is one of very few people know, but the court ruled in my favor in every regard, awarded a monetary settlement. And as of yesterday, this will be, when this is recording, it will be a little over a week and a half, I regained control of ronward.com.
All right.
And as Kristin and I are recording, we're working on, if you type in ronward.com, by the time you listen to this, it's going to take you to my main website, Forward Operations. So it was just a very good feeling to be validated by a court and my attorney for me to get the rights to, go figure, ronward.com.
I know.
Which is interesting. And there was a monetary award, which I may never see a penny, but it sure felt good. I even sent Kristin a section of the court order, because she's, as long as I've known her, I've been dealing with this. I even wonder that this could go either way. I'm tied up in what's potentially a civil suit, but everything went in my favor, and I'm really excited. But I do have some leadership lessons, Kristin.
Yeah.
Unless you have some more questions.
Absolutely. Well, no, I do think it's funny that you brought that up, because he's like, all right, when we were first planning out the podcast, like, I just want to let you know. I'm like, oh, whatever. She sounds like
I did think, Kristin, I have to tell you, I admire you, because some people would be thinking, well, I'm not going to get drug. I don't even know this guy. I'm not going to get drug in the in the mud with this person. But you were like, oh, I don't give a crap, Go
I can
for
sum somebody up really quick. I knew you were a good people.
Take her to court.
Take her to court. Get it.
That helped.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And but look at you now on the right side.
I know it was emotionally draining, though it really was, in more ways than one. And it held me back on making progress. And Kristin, firsthand, the company has really taken off since you and I even have been doing this podcast. There's a lot going on with it. And I think it would have happened earlier had I not been marred down with dealing with all this stuff.
Right, because that's when you had to go with the forward, right? And come up with...
Yeah, actually, Kristin, I had changed that because I knew I was going to expand at some point, but I had other plans for ronward.com that, we'll go into it another time. But it's also your namesake. And
exactly.
In my book,
it's so personal. In
my book, at the end of it, it says, if you want coaching or speaking, visit ronward.com. So even that, I wanted to redirect to Forward Operations, because I got a lot of books floating around out there.
Yeah. And it's not like you can just recall them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that piece alone is
all right.
frustrating.
So I did want to provide our listeners with some lessons that I learned.
Yeah. Like what would be the first thing you would say to people that are looking to hire someone that's going to provide a service?
First and foremost, don't just take their word. Now online reviews are very important, and I have found them to be helpful. If somebody's ripped people off, it likely is on there, but some people don't have
Yeah.
reviews. You need to have them provide you with a customer, a client that has worked with them, and you need to do a little bit of background. As a matter of fact, when I hired a coach, I did background. I've got French doors on my studio. I had those installed. The person sounded really odd, but I said, I need someone that you've done work with before. Yeah. And I called. That's number one.
So wait, the guy that installed him, he thought it was odd when you asked?
Yeah, that I made him give me a phone number of someone I could call, a customer.
Nice.
And he got it.
I like it.
He got it.
Hey, it's smart to do, because even when you're hiring people, I know I've made that mistake before of not checking references. But it is important to know where they've come from. So yeah, like you said, you don't want to let just anyone into your home. And that's important. So, okay, let's talk about guarding your online information. What's just because, you talked about how she asked you for the code, you gave her the code, now she has access to it, right? And she took over. So what's a strong password technique that you would share?
I'm so glad you asked that, because this is very important, folks. I'm going to give you something that I've been using for years, and I used in federal law enforcement. Number one is you can come up with a slogan. We're going to use something. I'm going to do something simple. Put two words together. My wallet is laying here and my keyboard. So let's say I'm going to use wallet.keyboard. Always put numbers on there and transpose those. So I might do wallet.keyboard 4321. Here's the reason. Kristin, I can stand beside of someone and say, type 1324. Their brain will click in and they will write down 1, 2, 3, 4 because they've done it a million times. Always transpose your numbers. Right. So I either use 1324, 4231. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I would go back to the very beginning, like I just got started. So if I did 1324, I would go 1, because that's my first rendition of 1324. So I would do 13241. Then if I want to change it a little later, I might do 13242.
I see.
So you're transposing numbers. Then you want to have some symbols. You can have an asterisk or whatever. Now, in my password keeper, Kristin, because I know my introductory phrase that I'm going to use, all I put is the symbols. That's all I have to have.
Oh, nice.
Because I know the rest. Then later on, if you want to go back and get a new intro, you can. But transposing those numbers, using those symbols, it can really help you. And you don't have to leave your passwords on your phone. If someone ever picked it up, they wouldn't know what the heck if I've got an exclamation point and a pound sign. Yeah. They don't know what that means. So it's smart. A great password keeper, but also it protects you in a great way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of people, and I don't think this came up in this specific case, but a lot of people that do partner with folks, they have to share, I've seen this a million times in the bank, they have to share some of their online banking credentials with people that work for them. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen small business owners be frauded by their employees. A lot of times it's online because they've shared it with them. It can be they've pulled checks out of the drawer and started writing bad checks. But what would you say about like if someone was using what's a good way basically when you're working with somebody, right, to ensure that they're not going to take advantage of you fiscally?
You know what's interesting is this just came up, Kristin. As you know, we're forming Forward Media Company.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing basically Palmetto Media Company is going to dissolve and I'm going to own Forward Media Company, but I'm bringing on an executive director who's a great web designer, marketing. And I literally, this is what I said, and this person agreed. I said, even though we've known each other for years, which we have, we're going to write up a contract, and that contract is going to assume we become worst enemies. And that sounds terrible, but I cannot even tell you how many people, I knew these two people, they went to a conference, they got all excited. They're going to be entrepreneurs. They're going to start this business together. They're all excited. Guess what? They're mortal enemies. They got in disputes over who owned what property of the business, and they don't even speak. So for some reason, money and business can change people, or misunderstandings, or you don't even know that
Yeah.
person's work ethic. Maybe they
Right.
want to come to work at 2 p.m. and you want to work at 8 a.m. There
Mm-hmm.
are so many dynamics, and you've got to cover yourself. So I would say get something in writing and
Yeah.
look at the worst possible scenario when you do that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
one of
huge.
the best ways. And then, of course, even if it's something small, like in this case, I will own Ford Media Company because I will not go in partnership with someone if I don't own it. That's just a
Right.
reality. Unless they
Right.
bring, like if somebody with multi-million dollar assets called me, I might consider it.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to bring a lot to the table to get me to go in a official business money
Right.
partnership.
Right. And so I agree with that. That's very smart. You want to be more conservative on that side. And I'll tell you folks from seeing it at the bank hundreds of times, you don't want to give your login information to your employees. Now, for people that run businesses that you can buy it like a online business suite.
Mhm.
The bank will charge you a little bit more, and you can have multiple users and you can manage what they are able to do and see. So you have some, which is what I recommend, that they can only go in and view the bank activity or the bank statements. Generally, that's as much as you want to give out, but sometimes you're going to need to give out the ability to transfer money. But you at least can monitor who it's being done by when
Mhm.
you give them their separate sign-ins, and then when they don't work for you no longer, you discontinue them. Got to be really
Kristen,
smart.
that's funny you said that because I did share several passwords with this person that
Mm,
defrauded me. And I've got a question for you in just a minute. But
yeah,
as far as it pertains to passwords, people need to know you can have an administrator of your social media account, which is what I
yeah.
did for about a year and a half. I was so busy. I've been doing my own for over the past 8 or 9 months, but I had a company that was doing my general social media posts, but they were admin. They could not
Mm.
see my messenger, anything like that. What I wanted to ask you from a banking standpoint, tell us a little bit about cosigners and how that works out.
Oh. Oh gosh. Well, so co-signing on lending, there's co-signing on, the bank accounts. I mean, it's I had always told people, especially it was amazing how many times friends would come in and want to get a loan together. Just because one has bad credit, so the other thinks, oh, I'll
Exactly.
come in. It's just a bad decision all around. And I wasn't afraid to tell people that. I wasn't afraid of hurting feelings because I saw a lot of folks that thought they were doing someone a service and they did themselves a disservice. And they ended up having to pay for, the loan payments that weren't ever paid by the main person, or an overdrawn account that they ended up being responsible for. So cosigners, you got to be really careful. Proceed with caution. And I mean, husband, wife, yeah, it's a given. I think you're gonna break trust if you don't have a co-owned account. But any other
Yeah.
relationship duo, I don't know.
There's a term called joint and severally, which means, let's say if Kristen and I took out a loan and she stopped paying, I'm responsible.
Uh-huh.
You don't get to walk away. And that's what I've seen people getting their cars repoed and things
Oh
happen
yeah.
because of that. But this is interesting that this came up. This just happened. I had someone call me a few nights ago. It was a woman that went in with her boyfriend and bought a house, and now she's miserable, wants to end it. And he won't sell the house, and it's half
Oh
hers. And there's not a real legal, like they're not married. There's no real legal binding reason that he would have to sell. She would have to take civil action, and
yeah.
it's all going to cost a lot of money. So it is an absolute mess. So if you're
Yeah.
listening, please do your homework, but also don't
Yeah.
be naive. Don't go into
No.
partnerships with people or get yourself financially obligated with someone, because there are benefits, but you need a contractual agreement and you need to really know that person. And I mean every level of how they operate,
Yeah.
what they do, things like that.
I know. It's wild to me how many, I think about even my ex-boyfriend and we got a dog together. And that's like I stayed in that relationship 3 years longer than I would have if it wasn't for that dog I loved so much. So it's one of those things where you have to really think about, if you're just dating and you're not getting married, you want to kind of ask yourself, like, do I really want to tie myself up here when I'm not tied up?
Yeah.
I don't have this formal arrangement. It's a tough one. And from the bank's point of view, yeah, they just want their monthly payment. So if that stops, she moves out and gets her own place, and the payment isn't being made because he can't afford to do it on his own. Yeah, it's going to be her credit, his as well, but her credit
Yeah.
that's damaged.
Well, this was more of the payments being made, but she wants to dissolve the relationship. And he's like, fine, go. Well, she can't afford to go get another house because she poured all of her
Yeah.
money in that one. So they went in 50-50. So
Yeah.
she's stuck. She's literally stuck outside of civil case. But you were correct in what you said. It can also, one person stops making the payment and you're responsible.
Yeah.
The other thing
exactly.
is one of the biggest trends, and I'm going to be honest with you, Kristin, I went all in because it saves me so much time. Almost every bill that I have is on auto draft, and I don't have to worry about it. Do you remember the days when you sit down and wrote checks and had to go mail checks at the post office and all that stuff? It was so good for me to get rid of that because where I live, even mailing books, I usually stay. It takes me a good hour, and that's if the post office isn't real busy, but it's a little drive for me. And I remember because I mailed so many books that I would stand in that line over and over. Online banking is great. Just monitor it. Even if you don't get receipts, make yourself put the app on your phone and check your account because it's going to tell you if, and banks are good now. I don't know how you guys did it, Kristin, but suspicious activity. There's been several times that, over Christmas, especially, someone got my debit card and the bank picked up on it quickly. So there was no real damage, but monitor your accounts.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And I want to tie back to, everything you've been through. How are you feeling now? Because this is pretty fresh. So just going back to the court case and the over 2-year legal battle, that's got to still weigh on you, even though he or she, I don't know if the judge was a male or female, but they ruled in your favor. But you've got to still have some feelings there.
Yeah, and you don't realize it, but I think even me going overboard to vet someone that may do work for me is a symptom of that. But it's wise, but I'm saying I may be operating from a different emotion and feeling. But yeah, I felt betrayed because I'd gotten to know this person. We started off okay, and then it caused so much damage, not just between me and her, but the collateral damage of me having to bring other people in, and they had to try to we tried to get my original website back because I'd spent hours providing content. So, it was both a financial loss. It was an emotional hit to me. And I spent a lot of time decompressing or venting with a trusted friend about it. I spent hours rebuilding. It's been a lot. It really has. And one thing I appreciated, my attorney asked me on the phone, he said, why did you write this book and what do you do? Would you consider this part of your legacy? And I said, absolutely. It's part of my legacy. And he said, do you feel like this fraud was, an attack on your legacy? And I said, absolutely. And I do. This is my legacy.
Right.
I've got a grandson, and he'll be able to hear episodes of this podcast one day if he wanted. Or he'll be able to read my book. His name's in it.
Cool.
So, but thanks for asking. I mean, I'm fine. I dealt with a lot of hardships in my career, as you can imagine, and I'm fine from it. But I did realize that I'm like, it's hard to trust people in business after this.
Well, something that really made me think of that, and I know we're going to wrap here in a minute, but I have a friend who was sued by the government for flying a Trump flag next to the Biden bus, right, in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And 4 years of lawsuits. She's a homeschool mom, and her husband's a electrician.
I remember that.
Yeah, she's one of my good friends. And so they were 4 years of absolute hell. And they ruled in their favor, which is fantastic. But she's really going through a lot of emotions right now. She's like, I don't understand it. You'd think I'd be fine, right? Like, but That is a lot of buildup. And it's like where you wake up, that feeling you wake up in the morning and you're like, everything's fine, right? And then you remember what you have on top of your, weighing on you. So, yeah, so that's a
Wow. I'm
very
glad to hear that, at
understanding.
least, because I
Oh,
remembered
yeah.
that. I remembered they were afraid of losing everything.
Yeah.
Kristen, let's give a few more quick pointers,
Yeah.
safety tips for our listeners.
Oh, and I'm just curious, Ron, real quick. I'm curious. So you met her through friends or family? Were your relationships there damaged as well?
Oh, I'm sure. I can only imagine what has been said about me behind my back.
I see. Yeah.
And there were threats to damage me, as I told you when we met, damage me
Right.
online.
Yeah.
So the relationships have certainly been damaged. I'm sure of that. I don't have proof of that, but I'm sure of that.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious if that was something. Sounds like that you might not have been as close with them as maybe I thought, but it wasn't like you see them every week at a
No, it wasn't.
function.
It's
No.
someone that I knew previously real well, and then
I
through
see.
time and distance had changed.
Yeah. Well, hey, blessing in disguise, I'd
Yeah.
say.
So let's throw off just a few other things. I want to
Yeah.
stress this one because this just happened as well. A friend who's very techie lost their Facebook account, Kristen, after 10 years of being
Mm,
on Facebook.
wow.
Someone stole it. And if they'd have had dual authentication, folks,
Mm,
I know you want to rush through, but when it asks you for dual authentication, if someone else tries to log into your account, it's going to flag you,
yeah.
and you have to take that second step to plug in your phone number or whatever it is. So they cannot steal your Facebook or other accounts because there has to be two forms of verification. So
Mm.
take the extra time and put that dual authentication. It's on all of my stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely smart. It's funny. As you're talking, I'm thinking, do I have all, yeah, I have all of that set up. It is
Good.
a pain. But yeah, and it's as easy as if you already have the YouTube app. I don't know if you have that one, Ron,
I
but
do.
yeah, and you just have to sign to your YouTube. Yes, that was me. Right. So yeah, no, that's incredibly that's so important because I have someone else I know. Same thing. They just took their Facebook. Luckily, they didn't do business on it. It was just like their personal account, but still, like you think about how long people have had their Facebook accounts for. So many photos and memories.
Oh, and by
And
the way, you won't get anyone at Facebook. Don't think you're going to get
oh,
help. When you
yeah,
lose it, it's
no.
gone.
Yeah. Same thing with Instagram. So all of Meta, they are not accessible.
Right. Right.
Just so everyone knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get any help there. You have to do your own due diligence. And I know a lot of people have their Facebook accounts held almost like held hostage, like you pay us this and we'll give it back to you, right? It's
Wow.
kind of crazy. Yeah, that's happened to my friend Ryan. But what I get a lot is, and I'm sure you guys have seen this. I mean, even people that don't have like influencer accounts, they have it to where people duplicate who they are. And I have people make profiles and pretend they're me and then go ask all my friends, hey, what do you think about, stock, all these stocks or what's the thing all the young people invest in these days?
Crypto.
Crypto. What do you think about the crypto game, man? And people will be like, is this you? No,
Kristen,
definitely
I've
not
had
me.
that happen a lot. I was on a dating site for a while. The guy used the word,
Are you
the
serious?
name. Yeah, there was a female reached out to me and said, I
Oh
just
my
want to make
gosh.
sure, are you on this dating site? I said, no, I'm not. I
Wow.
said, send me a pic and I'll let you know. Kidding.
Oh,
No,
that's
I
so
was on a dating
bad.
site, but yeah, I usually post it. You may have seen it. I put it on my story, but this wasn't long ago. Someone else had used my pics, and it
Yeah.
is curious to see what pics they choose. But give us a few
Yeah.
more, Kristen, and we'll wind this down. What else you got?
Oh, let's see here. A classic one that checking your credit report. So I'm not into, I know some people have those credit monitor apps or whatever, and they're
Mm-hmm.
checking it like every day. Like, let's not. Okay, folks. But if, maybe I'd say once every 6 months, go and see if you have any activity. You can also, I had this set up that basically I don't plan on taking any credit out anytime soon. So I have all my credit locked down. So like if I did go to buy a new vehicle or whatever, my credit was pulled, it would actually decline it because I would need to
You
go
notify
unlock
them.
credit.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
So
smart.
that's what I have set up. And That's been a while. But if, the annoying thing with that is if you are going to go apply for something, you do have to plan in advance to go shut that monitoring off for a few days. But that's a good one. I mean, that's like a surefire way to make sure someone's not going to go take a loan out in your name. Credit cards are really easy to take out in somebody else's name. But
and what about hard inquiries versus soft inquiries?
Well, okay. So a lot of times there are apps, like say you're looking for a vehicle. This is the most common that I've run into. You're looking to purchase a vehicle and then something pops up and says, oh, what's your area code? And you tell them your make and model that you're looking for. It basically shoots out your information well, of course, they ask you for more than just the make and model. They ask you for like your contact info and whatnot, but it shoots it out to dozens of institutions that could loan you funds, right? And so you're basically getting all these soft inquiries, and it doesn't negatively affect your credit as much as a hard inquiry, but it can lower it like 20 to 40 points.
And then I had someone that they kept letting car dealers run their credit, and they couldn't understand why their credit score, but it was showing up as a hard inquiry. And too many of those in a short period of time can last up to like 2 years on your report.
Yes.
A couple other things, Kristin, I wanted to mention is I bought a shredder not that long ago because I was doing safety tips on my social media channels, and I bought a shredder. But a lot of people don't know this. Under the Fourth Amendment, you have what's called a reasonable expectation of privacy. But the curtilage, beyond the curtilage of your home, AKA you put your trash out, anybody can go through your trash. And not that you're committing crime, but I'm saying that's evidence. Tons of cops go through people's trash during the investigation because they don't need a search warrant. So we have to understand that there are, people who go through other people's trash for various reasons, dumpster divers and things like that. So just be careful. You may want a shredder because whatever you put out there in your trash can certainly be subject to public scrutiny or public access with no ramifications.
So I'm curious about something. So what if it's on the side of your house?
The side, no, that's part of your house. That's within your curtilage. It's
That's
talking about when you put it out.
Like on the drive.
That curtilage is usually included in a search warrant. That would be like let's say somebody's searching your house, but you had a little building there on your property. That is part of the curtilage. So if they did get a search warrant, they could search that building as well in certain circumstances. Sometimes you have to put every specific thing, but I'm saying the curtilage is basically your property. So when you go out to a public sidewalk, you don't own that sidewalk. That's where they can, or the road.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
I do have a Vietnamese lady who goes through my garbage, but she's just pulling out my cans. And so one day I started helping her. But it does feel weird when someone's going through your garbage. Almost feels like they've seen you in your underwear,
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay. All right, it's legal. Sounds like.
One other thing, Kristin, that I do for public use, like on my cards, is I use a Google phone number, and you can set that up through Google Voice. It's very easy. Now, it is web-based. When you're outside the internet, it's going to be using your phone just like any other plan. But and it's not as dependable as your phone number. And I have friends, and I'm not sure why, because I have Signal and I have Google Voice that they will use that, especially international communications, but they'll use that. I definitely think Signal is more encrypted is the reason that's used. But people may want to think about there's various phone apps that you can get that you don't have to use your home number if you want to use a different one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to note, the gal I mentioned that digs through my garbage, I can almost guarantee you she has $300,000 in her checking account. So that's very typical from what I saw at the bank. She's a saver. So
yeah.
Pretty impressive. All right. Well, I think this has been good, Ron, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that because I know we wanted to go there a few times, but we couldn't legally. So I'm sorry you went through that.
This one has been an ordeal. So people, please take heed to everything we've said. Report suspicious activity, as they say. If you see something, say something. Because sometimes people are just left. I don't think I was the first victim. Let's put it that way.
Really? Okay.
No. And so if I'd done the appropriate background. I learned some stuff later, Kristin. I can't. I'm not going to go into that right
Tell
now.
me offline.
Yeah. So
Okay.
If people do their homework, they're definitely a lot less apt to be defrauded. And if they will take the extra effort for dual authentication, those kind of things, it's worth it. And things are getting
Okay.
way more advanced, and we may need that more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we covered this, especially got to flex my background in banking a little bit there.
That's right.
Forgot I knew all these things, Ron.
I knew you would when I was
Yeah.
putting this together. All right, everybody, be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.